The information and opinions you hear on the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show are those of the hosts, guests, and callers and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this station, its affiliates, its management, or advertisers. The Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show is for entertainment purposes only. Please consult a professional regarding your personal investment needs. Nothing presented on the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show constitutes an endorsement, recommendation, offer, or solicitation to buy or sell any product or security.
And now, Lifestyles Unlimited presents the Real Estate Investor Radio Show. Over the next hour, we unfold your map to financial freedom. You'll learn how to retire through investing in single-family and multifamily real estate. You'll learn how to create cash flow and build wealth so you can have the time and money to live the lifestyle you want.
Hello and welcome to the show. This is Andy Webb with Lifestyles Unlimited. And as always, we're working on your financial freedom. And boy, I got to tell you, I am seeing some great numbers out there right now on single-family rental property. Listen to this one. This just hit my inbox a few days ago from one of the Lifestyles Unlimited Realty team. This is a single-family house under $3,000 out of pocket to get into this thing, to buy it, rehab it, get it rented out, do all of the things we talk about on the show. Less than $3,000. That is 110% cash on cash return. Where do you see that? $75,000 in equity capture. That's a over 2,000% return. Just wow. Looks like a great opportunity. But, here's the but. I'm in Dallas-Fort Worth. I'm in Texas, and this is coming from one of the realty team in Kansas. Out of state, not sure what to do. So what is the first thing I might do? I might reach out to the realtor that sent me that information and get more info, learn about the property, let him know I'm interested. But next on my mind, I'm going to reach out to one of our national mentors for help. And for today's show, I have one of those national mentors on the program. We're going to hear his story and hear how he can help you if you have one of these sweet deals come across your radar. So without further ado, I want to welcome Rick to the show. Rick, are you there? How you doing?
I am. Hey, great to talk to you again, Andy.
Yeah, very good. It's been a while. For the listener's sake. Rick was a DFW mentor when I was getting my training wheels off, and I've known Rick for quite a while here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Now, you've moved on. You're now a national mentor. We're going to talk about that later, but let's go back even farther before I met you. Tell us a little bit about your background, what prompted you to start investing in real estate, and how you found Lifestyles Unlimited.
Yeah, sure. Well, I've been in the IT world for 30-some years, and of course, when you start paying taxes every year, you start asking your accountant, is there a way I can start reducing some of these? And actually, my accountant at the time talked about real estate, so I started looking into it, actually went out, bought my first rental property, and then, I started hearing about this radio show called Lifestyles Unlimited. And since it was local, because at the time I was living in the Dallas area, I started going to the events and, of course, became a member. And I was hooked right then. And because, when you're in the IT world, I tell this story when we have our case studies. And, of course, when people meet me for the first time, I'm 63 years old. And, of course, I started this when I was in my 50s. And when your hair's turning gray in the IT world, they're hiring people half your age for half the price, right? And, of course, all IT companies every 2 or 3 years are always what they call right-sizing their companies, right, i.e. layoffs. So I need to find a way. First, I wanted to reduce my taxes, but, of course, prepare myself for that time I might get that, called into the office. And, gosh, Andy, I think we're going on 10 years. It'll be 10 years in February.
Wow.
When I got that call to the office.
Now, you'd been investing already. You'd prepared.
I had been because, after I got my first one, I joined Lifestyles, learned what I was doing wrong. At that time, I grew my portfolio to 8 single-family rentals. So that made it a little easier when I went to the office. And, of course, they're probably figuring, I'm going to be all sad and all that. But I said, no, where's my box? Took my severance pay. Bought properties 9 and 10, and of course, since then, I've grown my portfolio in the North Texas area to 28 doors.
Wow!
And haven't missed that corporate world at all. And of
Very
course,
good.
Just relocated to Florida. So.
Yeah, and that's the interesting part too. We'll talk about that, I think. So you've done 28 doors. Did you have prior experience besides that one house, or was that your first foray into real estate investing?
Yeah, that was my first foray into real estate investing. Yeah.
Very good. And when did you join Lifestyles Unlimited? I joined March of 2012. I think you were around a little bit before me.
Yeah, I was probably around 2010, I think, 2009, 2010 or so.
Okay. So you've been around for a good dozen plus years, coming up on a baker's dozen here. 28 doors in North Texas. Now, are you still buying in North Texas now that you're in Florida?
No, actually, I'm looking. Of course, I'm still looking in Texas and that, but I have recently. I'm under contract for 2 properties now in Central Florida area. Because even when I was a mentor, now I've been a mentor now for 10 years. I've seen some of our national members. They started investing, so of course we're learning from our members what they're doing nationally as well. And they were doing well in the Central Florida area. So when I moved to Florida, I checked out those areas, and they were doing well, and invested in a couple properties here as myself. So,
good buddy of mine, he's in Dallas. He has a lot of properties here. He sold 1 or 2, did a 1031 exchange, and rolled those into 2 houses, I think in Sarasota, Florida, which is maybe central. I don't know the Florida Peninsula so well, but in that area. So he's
that's just slightly south of me. Ironically, I live in a town called San Antonio, Florida, near Tampa.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. Got it. Near Tampa, not San Antonio, Texas. Made the shift to San Antonio, Florida. Hey, that's great. So we'll talk a little bit more about the Florida market. That's a great story. So you came from a different angle than a lot of times I get the folks that are in your boat in the 50s that are joining because they realize I'm not going to have the funds to retire when I want to, or I see that those cuts are coming. You took a different angle. You said, hey, I'm paying too much in taxes. Well, real estate investing, we talk about all the time, is a great way to reduce that tax burden, defer those taxes like that 1031 exchange I just mentioned. And there are other ways that real estate helps you with that. I'm curious, we're talking single family, and I think that'll be the bulk of the show. Have you invested in any of the multifamily projects that we talk about on this show and at Lifestyles Unlimited?
Personally, no. I've kind of done my own you can call it my own little IRO, independent. I do own basically an 8-plex, which is, single families, if you remember, it's considered, single door up to 4 doors. So that includes duplexes and 4-plexes. But I own 2 4-plexes that is a single building, because that's what we teach you in Lifestyles. You never want to buy half a building, because you always have to worry about the other owner helping out with any roof repairs, foundation repairs. So I bought the whole building. And so that's my way I've gotten into multifamily. Just call me a control freak. I just like doing my own thing. I don't have to ask, partners, whether it's time to sell or time to do cash out refis. I only have one partner. Of course, that's my wife.
Yeah, very good. Well, and I think
she enjoys those cash out refis like you were just mentioning.
Oh yeah. Well, and I think it's a good counterpoint, because I do talk a lot as a radio host about the progression that we tend to see, which is maybe someone, like you were saying, doesn't have the capital to do something big. So you start with one house and maybe it grows to 2 and then 4 and then 8 and then 10. And a lot of people will then dispose of those houses and shift into multifamily. But you don't have to do that. And you're clearly a case study in the other side of the coin, which is, hey, just keep marching, doing what you do. You like the control. I get that.
Yeah. And, that's what's great about real estate, too. You can find your own path that really works. And that's, in Lifestyles, we have 12 single-family mentors that can help you do that. And we've all kind of found our own path. Like Joe Flores, who was one of our other national mentors, he basically did what you just mentioned. He sold all his single families and then went ahead and bought his own on his own, an 18-door multifamily property.
Yeah, we've got you, we've got Joe Flores, and I'll just throw the third one out there, Isaac, also a national mentor from Miami, now living in Oklahoma. You guys are moving all over the place, aren't you? You can't stay put.
Yeah, well, Isaac's got a great story as well. He was living in the Miami area, which, it's a nice area to live, but it's probably a little expensive to try to do any real estate investing there. So he was investing, just like you mentioned before, live where you want, invest where it makes sense. Well, he found it made sense to invest in Houston, and he ended up investing in Houston. I think he was able to retire his wife and, of course, move to a location that he now enjoys, which is in Oklahoma. So
there you go. So let's think about single family and we talked about the tax side of it. Were there other big benefits that drew you to that in particular as an investment vehicle?
Yeah, well, the financial freedom, and you're controlling your assets, like you mentioned. You can do cash out refis if it's still appreciating. You're still able to keep up with the expenses. So, of course, Dell's number one rule is must cash flow, and you can take out that equity and keep growing, or use the money as you want. You become financially free. I've never had to go back to the corporate world again because of my investing in real estate.
Yeah, very good. Now, again, I know you originally as a Dallas-Fort Worth mentor, like you said, buying in North Texas, as I predominantly did. I'm now invested elsewhere as well. But thinking more broadly, I opened the show mentioning a property blast that I got that is in another state. Why would I think about investing in another state? What motivates investors to do that?
Well, again, maybe they live in areas that are too expensive. I talk to a lot of members that live, in Virginia, right outside of, Washington, D.C., which is, just like California, very expensive. It doesn't really make sense. If you got $100,000 to invest, you might be lucky to buy one single-family rental property. Well, why not go to an area where you could buy 3 or 4? Just like you mentioned, the one in Kansas City, you can find a deal like that. Look how many you could buy if there was only $3,000 out of pocket.
Yeah,
now, that
great.
is a grand slam home run, but we are averaging between about $15,000 and $35,000 out of pocket nationally out of the, I think we're up to now 8 real estate offices that Lifestyles offer properties out of.
Yeah, the footprint is definitely getting bigger. I've been seeing a lot, just to throw out a couple other markets, I've been seeing a lot of good properties coming available in Georgia. Also in parts of Tennessee. We have an office in Arizona as well. I think in Missouri, around the Kansas City area. So we're definitely, that footprint is getting larger. And then obviously folks like yourself, you mentioned a number of other members operating in Florida. And I do love what you said earlier about the I guess the positive or the virtuous feedback circle. You, as a national mentor, are working with those people that are investing in these sundry disparate markets and always learning. And that really comes back to us as an organization and helps us find those great markets and continue to grow. Yeah, that $3,000 out of pocket. Rick, I don't know about what you're seeing, but it's becoming more and more a favorable market for us as single family buyers. That out of pocket is getting lower. I'm seeing greater benefits to me on the financial side. I don't know what you're seeing.
Yeah, you're definitely seeing right now, like last year, you saw a lot of appreciation. Obviously, the pricing was going up, but of course, interest rates are down. Now it's kind of reversed. Everybody's concerned a little bit because the interest rates have gone up a little bit. But when you can get a property for $3,000 out of pocket, it might be worth that investment.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Go buy it. So, hey, we're going to head into a quick break, and I want to hear a little bit more about the Florida market when we come back.
Got questions? Call Lifestyles Unlimited at 855-497-4335. The Real Estate Investor Radio Show continues next.
Everyone is asking, is it still a good time to invest in real estate?
We see no indication that for the foreseeable future, and even the unforeseeable future, no indication whatsoever that real estate is suddenly not going to be the best vehicle for creating wealth and passive income for your family. And so that would say that now is the time to get in. And we very rarely talk about this because we talk about cash flow. But now we're talking a little bit about capital gains and what the future brings in that property. Because it's real. At the end of the day, you have all your cash flow, but you've got this nice capital gain when you sell. And the inflation that we see and the reasons for it are going to continue. And we're going to see great capital gains at the end of the line when we sell these properties.
Get in on the next free workshop. Register at lifestylesunlimitedworkshop.com.
Listening to Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show will change your life. Now, here's your host.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Andy Webb. If you have any questions for me, you can send me an email to askandy@luinc.com. Again, that is askandy@luinc.com. And I'm joined today by a great guest. I'm joined by Rick. He's one of our national mentors now. He's based in Florida, helping investors with Lifestyles Unlimited across the nation. Now, when I met Rick the first time, this was probably a decade ago here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. He was a mentor back then in Dallas-Fort Worth as well. And Rick, we talked a little bit about Florida. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that market. Florida's a kind of a big elongated state. You got the Panhandle, you got the peninsula there. Are there areas that an investor might want to target?
Yeah, for sure. Of course, when you join Lifestyles and you have your initial mentor meeting with us, and we do those actually virtually now, so we spend an hour with you and talking about the path and your goals and so forth. And we give you what we call the timeline checklist. And part of that timeline checklist is basically take a look at the area you're looking to invest in. Obviously, you probably want to start up where you live. And again, here in Florida, if you're living, on the coast, as you know, we had a couple of hurricanes this past summer here, might not be an ideal place, because insurance costs could be high. So these are part of the checklist is to answer these questions. Also, is the town landlord friendly? You're going to find there are some towns, and actually the city of Orlando just had something on there during the election of rent control. We're not fans of rent control, because those same government that's telling you about rent control is also affecting your taxes. And, of course, if your taxes are going up, you need to increase rent. They always want to blame the landlord, but the only reason the landlord's raising their rent is so they can still cash flow on the property. So those are things you want to look at in your individual city or county, is check out, are they landlord-friendly? Right now I am finding, like the cities of Ocala, a town called Inverness, south of Ocala, the interior part of central Florida, is really where you're going to find some great opportunities for you. And, of course, having the benefit of a mentor who gives you these tools, or the map that, David and Del always talk about. We give you these actual checklists so you know exactly what the next step is. It's basically a soup to nuts that you can't go wrong. Of course, you have unlimited access to the mentors as well. So there's never a dumb question, because we've heard them all. And that's, of course, why we're here, is to help you through that. I call it the Sanity Checklist, because, again...
You're a very mild, mellow guy. You're very easy to talk to. And I know when I first started, I was still nervous, and I did fear asking the stupid question, and it's hard to get over that sometimes. But our mentors help make that a little bit easier. And that timeline checklist, I have a printout right here in my radio studio. I reference that all the time. That's 9 pages of here's what you do for buying a single-family house.
And like I said, from soup to nuts to, acquiring or purchasing the property, all the way through getting it leased.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so some interesting parts of Florida to consider, and it's a valid point. Just because a state, I think of Texas as being a very landlord or owner-friendly state, but you're right, there are cities that maybe are less so. Austin comes to mind, other places perhaps. Yeah, Dallas more and more so. They are also passing some aggressive rules and whatnot. I don't no sort of rent control that I'm aware of yet, but definitely something to look into before buying, and then obviously stay tuned to as you hold. Now, you mentioned the timeline checklist, and I know part of that we talk about leasing the property and ongoing management. How are you managing your Texas properties from Florida?
Well, you can call me the laziest mentor out there, because we do teach, obviously members to how they can easily manage their own properties. But to me, the lifestyle is the only job I want is to find my next property and, of course, do those cash out refis every couple of years. So from day one, I've always used property management. And when I started out, again, I was in the IT world, an IT project manager, on call 24/7. I just didn't have the desire or time, to be able to show your property and, of course, take the phone calls and so forth. So I chose property management. Obviously, it does cut into your cash flow, but comes down to what's the lifestyle that's right for you.
Absolutely well put. Yeah, I just literally yesterday had a conversation with somebody on this very topic, because you're working full time when you get started typically, and how do you manage the time? Well, this is a great option. Yeah, you give up a little bit. I think here in Texas, 6 to 10% maybe of the gross rents. I don't know. It probably varies from state to state. Again, something you look into as you do your research. What does the property manager do for you?
Yeah, well, what's great about having a property manager, especially you're not there, so obviously they have eyes on your property. I have a property manager that actually goes out there 4 times a year to just kind of do an inspection, make sure the tenant's not doing anything crazy like painting your house black or doing some crazy things on the outside to the property. And, of course, there's any damage while they're still under contract with you. They're charging them and taking care of those repairs and keeping them up, so you're not having to find out, 12 months after the fact or whenever after they moved out. So, and of course, they take the phone calls on the 4th of July when, a typical tenant might always find that to be the hottest day and their AC is just not cold enough.
Isn't it just?
I'd rather enjoy my beer,
Yeah. Living the lifestyle. Absolutely. So they take that burden off your shoulders.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's good. So you've got a property manager here in Texas. You're acquiring in Florida now. You're going to manage those or keep those in the property management hands?
Nope. I've already got one that I've got in mind there to go ahead and take that care of.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
So something to think about for the listener. And I personally, every time I buy a new single-family house, I do my financial modeling, and Rick, I always build in the cost for property management. Now, I personally, for the past decade and foreseeable future, I self-manage. So I'm on the other end of the spectrum. Sure. I like even more control, and I have good systems in place that allow me to do this. We're up to 18 doors. We're always on the road in the RV. It's fully doable. But yeah, there is that little bit of contact and whatnot. But I always model, what is the cost to me going to be on this one house if I decide to go the property management route, and I see what my profit will be in that case. And the truth of the matter is, when you get above a certain number of doors, you have negotiating power to bring that cost down quite a bit as well.
True.
As far as mentoring goes, how has that changed for you now that you are a national mentor?
Well, I'm learning obviously more about the various states because we have these conversations with the members who actually live in these states. And ironically, you'd be surprised how many people from Hawaii are now investing in the continental, in the 48 states. We actually did nationally, we started to do now national road trips. I did a road trip in Georgia a few months back, and we were showing the property with the GC. He was there explaining the kind of rehab he was doing. Of course, we had the agents there that sold the property, but you know where the owner of that property or the member lived? In Hawaii.
Wow.
You can't get much farther. And talking about live where you want and invest where it makes sense, he found it made sense to invest in Georgia versus obviously Hawaii would be. And that's what's great, again, is being to go out. And, of course, we have national events. I think we have already 20 scheduled for just next year.
Wow.
Of course, along with Expo that's coming up here in February. But it's a great way. I love just meeting the national members, and are showing me and telling me how they're doing the same map that we gave them in their own states, in Georgia, Tennessee, Kansas, and Missouri, places where we've now opened up real estate offices.
Very good. So you're making the road trip to go to the road trip. And for the listener, a single-family road trip, Andy, I had no experience when we started a decade plus ago. I got to tell you, Rick, that was by far the biggest thing that I went to every month, were those single-family road trips to learn about construction and numbers and meet the vendors, as you mentioned. It's a great way to go. And you can do those virtually as well if you don't have the time to get to Georgia from.
Great right now. Yeah, you can live in Georgia or some other state and watch the road trips, especially the Texas ones. Because there is so much growth, especially in North Texas. Ever since Toyota moved their headquarters there, it's just been amazing, the growth that's been happening in North Texas alone. But to be able to just on a Saturday morning watch the mentors, the vendors, the agents talk about their story. Every Saturday morning there's usually a road trip that you can watch online.
Yeah, don't get me started on North Texas. Boy, I read recently Dallas-Fort Worth is ranked number 2 going into 2023 for real estate markets to focus on, behind Nashville, Tennessee. You mentioned Toyota. More recently, Bell Helicopter over in Hurst, I grew up in that area, was recently awarded their tilt rotor helicopter was awarded a huge package. So we're going to see some growth there from the military.
Right.
I'm curious, as a national mentor, who are you most commonly speaking with? If I think about that Kansas deal I just saw, is it an investor, like you said, from Hawaii or California that's looking to buy in Kansas? Is it local people in Kansas because we don't have the brick and mortar there that are local to Kansas? Or is it maybe someone like me going from Texas to Kansas? Who are you most commonly speaking with?
To be honest, all of the above. Again,
Okay.
When I get off the radio with you today, next hour, I'm talking to someone from Arizona. So obviously we do some investing in Arizona, but I'm going to be telling them about these other markets as well. Kansas City, I've got a member I've been talking to in California. She went out and bought 4 duplexes in the Kansas City area.
Cool.
Just this past summer. So, I'm talking to everyone. That's what's great about the national program is, again, we have members and listeners in all 50 states.
Absolutely, we do.
I haven't talked to anyone to Alaska, though, but many
We'll work on that.
states I have.
Well, when we do our RV road trips, I try to find local people to speak with on the program. And I was in Colorado recently, got a lot of listener questions. So maybe I need to convince my wife to let me pull that RV all the way up across Canada into Alaska. Now, actually, speaking of Colorado, if somebody's in Colorado and they want to invest in Dallas-Fort Worth in Texas, are they talking to you, or do they then dial in our local Dallas-Fort Worth mentors?
Well, again, you really have, we're not trying to define, where the mentors are now, because we're growing so crazy nationally now that you can really talk to any of us. Now, again, start with the national, the mentors here, but again, that you still have access to the other mentors. So again, if you're looking to invest in the North Texas area, the San Antonio, Central Texas area, or even the Houston area, you have access to the mentors that live and invest in those areas as well. Because while, again, as national mentors, we can help you with, the basic stuff, putting your team together, putting your numbers together and so forth, you might have some specific questions about the certain towns, the local rules like we were talking about earlier, Dallas, Texas, not a fan, but I love all the cities around Dallas, Texas, because Dallas, Texas, they love doing yearly inspections, and they charge you $100. And if you don't pass the inspection, you can't rent your property out. Mm-hmm. So not a fan of Dallas, Texas, but everything around Dallas, Texas. So you can ask those local mentors those type of questions.
Yeah, very good. And for the listener, if you're new to the program and you're thinking, why are we talking so much about Texas? Please understand, Lifestyles Unlimited has been around for over 30 years now, 3+ decades, and was founded in Houston, Texas, grew into Central and North Texas. So naturally, we have a very big base here, and Texas is a great place to invest. You can't get away from that. And I wanted to ask you, when you have these conversations, is there maybe one big fear or common concern that you hear from the out-of-state investors?
Putting their team together, because again, you want the basic. Obviously, you need a lender, right? You need a insurance guy. You want a GC and or handyman. So that's the biggest, trying to get over. Obviously, since Lifestyle's been in Texas for so long, we have a great vendor program in the Texas area. But again, we're slowly growing nationally. But while we have lenders and insurance guys that can cover in many of the states outside of Texas, we obviously don't have the local tradesmen that you need, the roofers. So as a mentor, what I do is teach folks on how to find that local team, because it's very, like I moved to Tampa here. Obviously, we didn't have many vendors here. So ways that we teach you on how to find those local vendors is Facebook is a great way. Just put in Tampa Real Estate Group or wherever you live, because that's where you're going to find the flippers, the tradesmen, obviously the agents. And, on social media, they're not shy about telling you who's good, who's bad.
Yep.
We actually have now some local lifestyle groups that are growing nationally. And once you join, you can join those groups to ask other members, hey, I need a HVAC guy in Florida, and see if someone out there can help you. And, of course, we have members that are becoming ambassadors in the different states as well.
Hey, I hear the music coming up. You are listening to Lifestyles Unlimited's Real Estate Investor Radio Show.
The information and opinions you hear on the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show are those of the hosts, guests, and callers. The Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show is for entertainment purposes only. Please consult a professional regarding your personal investment needs. Nothing presented constitutes an endorsement, recommendation, offer, or solicitation to buy or sell any product or security.